Thank you, dear Ian. Hi, everyone, everywhere around the world. And what a special night tonight it is that I have Chocolate on my left and Fluffy on my right. I haven't had them together for a long time because they turn it into games. But tonight they were just so gentle, and it's wonderful to have that kind of all-embracing, innocent love that your dear, dear fellow furry souls, I call them, that are in our life. And it just adds so much. I love Chocolate. I love Fluffy. I love all you guys. And I'm so glad they're with me tonight, and hope you have your cats, dogs, and pets there. You know, October has been an interesting month in a lot of ways. It has had continuing strange boom reports from places as far apart as New England and Phoenix, Arizona. Loud booms that have shaken houses so hard that framed pictures have fallen down from walls. And yet no one finds evidence, even when the walls and windows shook hard. And there are new reports from Arizona and Louisiana. On Tuesday, October 12th, residents near 17th Avenue and Chandler Boulevard in the Phoenix suburb of Albuquerque heard a loud noise and felt their houses vibrate. The Albuquerque Foothills Village is 19 miles southeast of the Phoenix City Hall. One resident near Chandler Boulevard and 17th Avenue told ABC 15 News, quote, "It was like a sonic boom or like a large bird hit the side of the house. I went to look outside and there was no large bird," close quote. His neighbor a few doors down said, quote, "It sounded like part of our house, like the second floor roof, was caving in," close quote. The Arizona Geological Association reported that, quote, "The last earthquake felt throughout the Phoenix Basin was a magnitude 4.1 on November 1st, 2015. That was centered near Black Canyon City, 65 miles north of Albuquerque. So the Geological Association speculated that it was maybe a sonic boom, but like so many other strange boom reports, there is no evidence of military craft breaking the sound barrier over Phoenix and Albuquerque. Since October 2018, the Phoenix Police Department and local TV stations have received several reports of unexplained explosion sounds. One mystery boom the week before Christmas on Saturday, December 15th of 2018 came at 5 a.m. and residents in northwestern Phoenix said, quote, "The explosion sound shook the walls and windows. It was intense. It was powerful." And remember last week on the October 13th Earthfiles YouTube broadcast, I reported about the loud, unexplained boom and shaking reports throughout southern New Hampshire and parts of Massachusetts and Maine that were reported near 11:30 a.m. Eastern on Sunday, October 10th. Social media messages from more than 40 towns reported ground and house-shaking booms. But the USGS said there were no earthquakes. The FAA said no military planes were breaking the sound barrier. And then there was the possibility of a bolide crashing to Earth, but it was near 11 a.m. All the original news reports said the New England boom was near 11:30 a.m. Eastern, leaving a half-hour discrepancy. 4 days after my October 13th broadcast, I received an email about a very dramatic boom with physical evidence from Sean Maloney in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, about 60 miles from the Gulf. Sean is an astrophotographer. He produces this Red Stick Astro website. Sean spends most evenings working with camera equipment to photograph deep space objects such as these nebulae and galaxies. And here he is now from his home in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, to share what happened.
Well, I was kind of hoping that I would get to experience one of these loud booms at some point in time because I keep hearing about them. But I tell you, when it happened, it was not anything what I would have expected. It was about 3:30 a.m. last Sunday morning, October 17th, and I had just gone to bed, I guess around 2:15 a.m. And I'm an astrophotographer, so I spent a lot of my time late in the evenings photographing deep space objects like nebulas and galaxies with my telescope equipment. And on this particular night, I was letting my equipment finish out the night on its own, and I had just decided to go to bed. And I hadn't been to sleep for, I'd say, 45 minutes when the most horrific boom literally blew me out of bed. I kid you not. The sound was so loud that I was literally launched out of my bed. And my feet were on the floor before the sound had completely rumbled through the sky. It scared me to death. Even my border collie, Duke, was going nuts, running around the house and barking and trying desperately to get outside and investigate what was going on. And my first inclination was that it was a massive lightning strike near the house. And my worry was that all of my expensive imaging equipment was getting wet in a rainstorm. So in the seconds that it took me to pull on some clothes, I had this really foreboding feeling that it was something more. And whatever it was not good. And I was scared. And so I wanted to investigate, so I grabbed my shotgun because I live on like 5 acres of land. And I was not sure what it was that I might be walking into outside. And Duke wanted to go out so bad, but his leash was in the car, and I wanted to take him with me, but I was too worried to let him just go run free outside. So I opened the front door, and I pushed Duke back, and I stepped out onto the front screened-in porch, and I just looked around. And I could see my imaging gear. It seemed to be fine. It was up and running. And so I went around the corner, and I went out the side door and stepped out into the carport with my flashlight and my shotgun. And I peered around, and I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. And I was shaking this whole time. And I walked around the side of the house expecting to see some sort of massive tree or something that could explain it, but I didn't see anything. So I was still nervous and decided that probably the best thing would be to go back in and wait, the few hours until morning when the sun came up, and then I could go and investigate and see if there was any damage anywhere. Once I got back inside and shut the door, that's when I noticed the plates in the kitchen from the shelf were on the floor. All my photographs on the wall were either crooked or some of them were actually on the floor. So what's going on with my imaging? So it occurred to me to go check on that rig. I walked into the kitchen where I have a laptop, so I logged into the computer outside that controls my scope, and everything was working fine. It was still imaging. But when I clicked on the history graph of the guidance system, which controls basically the smoothness of my imaging, I saw this huge spike in the graph from about 5 minutes ago. And this means that something vibrated the entire scope in the rig because it registered on the guiding system. It only registers corrections and up and down movements as the star it's watching. But if you tap on the tripod or touch the scope, it will register a vibration. Well, whatever this vibration was, it sent the spike all the way off the chart and way back down onto the bottom. So I had proof that something had happened. So I have no idea what it was, but I know now how people feel when these things happen. Beyond that, I haven't heard anything. I've talked to people since then, and I seem to be the only person that heard it. And I know it happened.
If anyone listening tonight has more information about the past decade of mystery booms, not only in the United States and Canada, but around the whole world, please contact me through ProtonMail or hard U.S. mail or FedEx, or my hard mail address, which is Post Office Box 21843 in Albuquerque, New Mexico, 87154. And my email address always is earthfiles@earthfiles.com. My goal is to learn and report facts. You can also reach me on many different subjects at my email and post office. And for those who would like to communicate something that might be more sensitive, use ProtonMail or hard mail. Now, some of the best hard evidence of very advanced intelligences interacting with Earth are the many documented cases of UFOs interfering with our past and present Minuteman nuclear missile sites since the 1960s up to 2018 and evolving. The current intercontinental ballistic missile force consists of 400 Minuteman III missiles designated with the color red on this map. At the top two red areas, the upper left is the 341st Missile Wing at Malmstrom Air Force Base in Great Falls, Montana. Top right is the 91st Missile Wing at Minot Air Force Base in Minot, North Dakota. The bottom red is the 90th Missile Wing at F.E. Warren Air Force Base near Cheyenne, Wyoming. One shocking event in the 21st century was headlined, quote, "Huge UFO sighted near nuclear missiles during October 2010 launch system disruption," close quote. According to UFO investigator Robert Hastings at his website UFO Chronicles, on October 23, 2010, the F.E. Warren Air Force Base in Cheyenne, Wyoming, temporarily lost the ability to communicate with 50 of its Minuteman III nuclear missiles. Hastings explained that a whistleblower leaked this dramatic military report to the contributing editor at The Atlantic, who published the news 3 days later on October 27, 2010. The Air Force confirmed the problem. But then there were contradictions about how long the missile and launch control facility communications were broken down for the 50. One report said they were down for 59 minutes. However, Warren Air Force Base technicians said the communication breakdown lasted for several hours. These same technicians said there were many Air Force personnel who saw, quote, "an enormous cigar-shaped craft maneuvering high above the missile field," close quote, while the vital communications between nuclear missiles and the launch controllers broke down. The giant UFO was also seen the next day by technicians who were angrily warned by senior authorities to not talk to anyone. The strict policy of denials and lies about UFOs and Minuteman missiles has also angered U.S. Air Force Staff Sergeant Robert Salas since his own dramatic experience with UFO interference at Minuteman missiles near Malmstrom Air Force Base in Great Falls, Montana on March 24th of 1967. That's why he has twice organized press conferences at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., including the one yesterday morning on October 19th. Bob Salas has long wanted to see congressional hearings about all the facts of UFOs, UAPs, interacting with Minuteman missile sites dozens of times, causing disruptions that Boeing engineers say are impossible. And yet, the UFOs have complete control. A couple of weeks ago, Bob talked to me about the March 24th, 1967, astounding shutdown of 10 Minuteman missiles every second for 10 seconds under the influence of a large glowing red UFO above the missiles.
I was on duty as the commander of the site. This is a launch control facility, 60 feet underground. We're locked into a concrete and steel capsule. There's just two of us. My commander, who was Fred Mywald, we were both first lieutenants at the time. He was taking a rest break, and I get a phone call from the topside guard, and he's telling me they were seeing strange lights in the sky. These lights were flying over the facility, going very fast, then stopping on a dime, reversing course, making 90-degree turns, no engine noise. They were obviously under control. He said, "They're not aircraft, sir." And I said, "What do you mean?" Are they like UFOs? And I chuckled because we had reports in the local newspaper at Great Falls Tribune of lights in the sky reported by people in the Great Falls area. And that's why I chuckled at him. He said he couldn't explain it, but he just felt he had to report it. It was a serious report. It was not a joke. I thanked him and hung up. And then about 5 minutes later, he called back. This time he was extremely frightened, extremely agitated. He was babbling. He was screaming into the phone. He had all the guards out with their weapons looking at this red-orange pulsating light, relatively large light hovering just above the front gate. And he was very concerned, very upset, and wanted me to tell him what to do about this. I think he was asking for permission to fire on this object. But by that time, I realized we were under some sort of attack. So I told him, make sure nothing enters the fenced area. He said one of his guards got injured, and then I went over to wake up my commander who was taking a break, and all of a sudden the missiles started shutting down. We look over at the status board, and all 10 missiles went down within seconds. All the lights turned from green to red.
Were these the shutdowns in which each missile was going off at a regular every second?
They went down quickly, 10, 15 seconds.
At that moment, did you think that was possible?
No, we were shocked. Our systems were very reliable. In the 3 years I was there on crew, we never lost more than one missile, and usually due to power surges or something like that. This was impossible. And even the Air Force, later on, when I was able to get documents about the Echo flight incident, we were at the Oscar flight. Echo flight was another flight at Malmstrom that happened a week earlier.
And you did not know about it at the time that the 10 missiles went down so rapidly at Oscar flight on March 24th?
No, not at all. And what happened was when we reported this to the command post back at Great Falls at the base, they told my commander that the same thing had happened at another facility a week earlier. That was the Echo flight shutdown, a very similar incident, except that Echo flight had maintenance people and guards, security guards, out at two of the sites.
Where the Minuteman missiles are, and how far apart would they have been between Oscar and Echo?
I would say about 30 to 40 miles away. But the UFOs were seen directly over the launch facilities in the Echo case. They lost all 10 of theirs within seconds. And of course, we have documentation stating that specifically. All 10 missiles went down within seconds, and the Air Force could not explain why. The indications we were getting as far as failure mode was guidance and control system failure, which meant that the inertial guidance system disconnected from its computers. UFOs sent signals to each of those missiles separately to upset what we call a stable platform for the inertial guidance system, and therefore the missiles couldn't be launched because they didn't know where to go.
Yes. And the idea that you would be working at the Oscar flight and 30 or 40 miles away, there would be the Echo flight and all of the other Minuteman missile sites around Malmstrom, just like at all of the other places where we have Minuteman missiles.
Right.
I don't understand how it would be possible that 10 would go down at Echo on March 16th and you all at Oscar would not be told.
Exactly. We had briefings before we went out on alert, very specific briefings as to what was going on in the field, and we had no clue. But when we went out on alert on the 24th of March, none of the crews were aware that what was going on were very serious investigations of the Echo flight shutdown.
You would think that was urgent information for everyone in all the U.S. Minuteman missile sites to know.
And in fact, when the final report was made of the Condon investigation, there was no mention of the Echo or Oscar flight shutdowns.
One of the references in your book, Unidentified UFO Phenomenon, How World Governments Have Conspired to Conceal Humanity's Biggest Secret, giving some insights about the fact that the government has known about other types of intelligences interacting with our planet, and yet they have maintained these policies of strict denial and lies. You mention in your book that there was a Lieutenant Smith. Here's from the book. Airman Smith saw a large orange UFO at Echo Flight. He was not willing to talk publicly because he was afraid of losing his high security clearance.
Many witnesses out there that would be willing to come forward. I talk about a fellow named Tex who was bringing one of the Echo Flight missiles back up on alert. He went through his checklist, and this UFO comes over and hovers right above him and demonstrates that he can shut down the missile at will.
How did the UFO demonstrate that?
This airman was going through his checklist in the maintenance bay of the missile silo, the launch facility. The UFO shows up, reported by the guard upstairs. He tells this airman about it. The airman sees it and feels he had to go back and finish bringing the bird back up on alert. This object just hovers there. He goes through his checklist, gets to a particular point, and the missile shuts down. He said he tried this over and over again, and every time he got to one particular point in his checklist, the missile would shut down again. And he felt a column of electrical energy coming down the tube from this object where he was working. And his conclusion was this object was demonstrating to him that they knew exactly how our systems worked and were able to disable them at will.
Now, Airman Smith, you quote him as saying, nothing could be discussed with another human being about what he knew at Echo Flight. Nothing could be discussed. And yet today, you think that he wants the public to know the whole truth.
Oh, absolutely. One of the worst things that happened is I could not speak with the guards after the incident. I had to sign a non-disclosure statement. I was unable to speak to anybody about it or violate that non-disclosure statement, which would entail my being court-martialed and sent to prison for decades. And those guards called me the next day, begged me to come see them, and I couldn't. I had to turn them down.
Wow.
That's one of the things that has bothered me all these years and one of the reasons that drives me to keep going.
Were you ever able to privately sit down with any of those guards to really talk honestly?
No, I did not. What happened was the next morning after the Oscar flight incident, I went upstairs to talk to the main guard, and he was very reluctant to talk to me because he had already been told not to speak to me about it. It became very hush-hush, and I had to pry out of him what the object looked like. He was able to determine that there was an oval shape inside of a very bright orange-red light, and that it was just hovering there in front of the gate. We were ordered back to the base. They even sent a helicopter up for us. We had to go directly to our squadron commander's office, and we were ordered to sign this non-disclosure document. From that point, I didn't speak about it for another 27, 28 years.
Bob, all of the people that you were in contact with saw UFOs above Minuteman missile silos in the United States in the 60s?
Not only the 60s, but in the 70s, even the latest one in 2018. So there's been other incidents, 2010, and all throughout since the 60s. There have been incursions at nuclear weapons bases by UFOs. There are many, many witnesses out there that could speak to this. If the Congress had the will to hold open hearings, they could bring many, many witnesses forward.
What is the biggest stumbling block?
I don't know. It's a political issue, of course. Everything's political in Washington.
But we've had the 180-day countdown, which a lot of us hoped that the government of the United States would take advantage of the energy and the curiosity of everybody in that 180-day countdown and announce we are not alone in this universe. We never have been. And our government has known that there are extraterrestrial biological entities on this planet, inside this planet, inside the moon, and they've known that since going back to World War II onward. And the idea that we are now at 2021 and the government of the United States seems still reluctant to announce what so many people, especially in the military, have known over the last 70-some years.
Absolutely correct. The biggest hang-up, I think, is the admission that the government would have to make that, yes, indeed, they've been hiding these facts from the public for over 70 years, 75 years, and not confirming what's been obvious to many, many people, especially in the military.
And further, a new book released last week called Skinwalkers in the Pentagon is by engineer James Lakatsky, biologist Colm Kelleher, and reporter George Knapp. And in chapter 13, it says about a UFO incident at an American SAC base, quote, "To have an unidentified aircraft anywhere close to the weapons storage area on one of the premier nuclear missile bases in the United States has grave national security implications," close quote. And I say, whatever is happening, wherever it is happening, that we humans deserve the truth. That's what I appeal in all directions. We deserve the truth about the whole global and cosmic relationship to all of these issues of our not being alone in this universe, not being alone on this planet, not being alone in this solar system, governments that know that, while meanwhile all of the truth is kept from human citizenry. There's something about it that I think flies in the face of all of the justice that a divine field would want for conscious creatures. We've got to break through the policies of lies and denial and know the truth. And to go from a serious note to a more joyous one, I got a note that Hannah is out there. And Hannah, thank you for sending me the 3 hearts. I love you, love you, love you so much. I couldn't love you more. She is my beautiful, beautiful, beautiful granddaughter who just had her 7th birthday. Smart and can dance and twirl in the wind and fantastic. I love you, Hannah. Thank you for sending the hearts. And now, Ian, I transition to you.
Hi, Linda. Just before I go to the super chats, I've got a message here from Kevin S., who's at Princeton, who says the group of scientists who are watching at Princeton absolutely love you and you inspire us.
Well, thank you. Listen, let's make some kind of a meeting so that I can bring to you some of my astrophysical challenges and questions, and I could learn from you, and we could have a discussion. And I'm very serious about that. I would fly, even against the COVID pandemic, to come and talk with you at Princeton. Thank you.
Okay. Kevin S. says he's going to be in touch by email anyway, so we'll keep in touch with him.
Thank you, Ian.
Okay, I'm going to go for the super chats now. So thank you very much, Moonbird, Joanna Cux, Doreen Garby, Sweet Cheeks, Rainy River Girl, Sexy Sadie.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, you guys.
And I just want to emphasize as well for all of our viewers out there, can you please like and subscribe? Please like and subscribe and share and tell everyone about it.
Yes, please do, around the world. And I know, Ian, you did a check, and that cumulatively we've heard from at least 150 countries around the planet since I've been doing the Earthfiles YouTube channel.
Yeah, I've just gone through the statistics. In fact, the latest statistics I have is that Earthfiles has been watched at the moment in the last up-to-date data I have by 73 countries in total. So we've got some people in here tonight, even from Iceland, Israel, Croatia, and Panama.
Oh, welcome. My whole goal is that we have this global dialogue and that we come together in mind and consciousness about what is really going on, and that if more and more and more of us did that on the planet, then maybe we would stop having wars. And ultimately, I guess that is my dream. So what do we have up for the first comments or questions?
Well, Linda, what about the uptick in volcanic activity? Do you think this is linked at all with Earth changes?
It's interesting, during the video, Brad said to me, did you know that there has been a new volcano erupting in Japan? We know about the one in the Canary Islands, and there have been a few others. And in hearing that it is quite large, possibly a potential big one, I remembered that back in 2014, the physicist that I have referenced on this program many times, who I met and had worked at Area 51, he was the one who said that they had been running in the 70s underground some kind of program of some sort in which they were projecting energy having to do with this black hole at the center of the Milky Way galaxy, periodically burping some kind of energy, not light and not matter, but energy, that could run through the Milky Way galaxy. And his asking me, what do you think would happen if there was a certain amount of energy that was released with a certain inertia force, and what would happen if it hit an Earth, a planet that is 2/3 deep water? And you can kind of do this mental exercise with me, that as I see that in my mind's eye right now, I always have seen that it would have a jerk, even if it's a fraction of a second. There would be some kind of a jerk. And a jerk in my mind sees the oceans would be still going forward as liquid water. And therefore they would rise even if the Earth just jerked for a short period of time and then kept on moving. That you can imagine that all of the deep ocean water on this planet might rise suddenly with inertial force going forward. And that's what he was talking about, that he had worked on underground at Area 51, and that one of the projections on a timeline was that, and this, remember, this is 2014, so 7 years ago. He said one of the projections was that between 2020 and 2030, there would be increased global Earth instability, translated in volcanoes, earthquakes, stronger winds, bigger droughts, all of it. And what the relationship would be between all of it, I cannot give you, but one of the sentences that he said that I have never forgotten was that one of the hallmarks of the beginning of this big change on the Earth will be when there is a volcano after a volcano after a volcano. So are we moving in to a time that people doing remote viewing 20 years ago, 30 years ago could access? Is this really the decade of tremendous instability, and that out on the other side will come maybe a planet that finally has been told all of the truth about the fact that we're just one species among many, many in this universe, and that our own solar system and our own planet and our own moon have been places that I call like hotels, where other species have come and gone. And now it is having, to me, a huge impact on my thinking about the future of Earth, Mars, with Elon Musk launching to Mars. Is there a reason for this launch in 2024? When Elon Musk was quoted a few months ago saying that he had a goal that by 2050 he would have 1 million people from Earth in the underground base on Mars. Is it because that there has been this knowledge maybe since the 70s, right after the Apollo program, that we were going to be moving into a time of tremendous change, socially, politically, spiritually, and that at the biggest box of all, that we have to have our relationship with this universe, with all conscious life, redefined, made real for us, if humanity is going to survive itself on this planet. I really think it's a fundamental equation. And I think we are way past the moment where all humans, right now in the 21st century, they can take being told all of it. They want it. Young people especially, they come up to me and say, Linda, we know we're not alone. They're impatient to move on with the truth. And then if we had real truth, maybe we would begin to understand how important having people represent us in government be honest and be trustworthy. And it seems as if even that has been slipping away. So I hope that we can continue to grow and be a dialogue around this whole planet on Wednesday nights about all of the different facets that keep coming up in your emails and in your letters and in the work that I am doing, and have this be both fun, even though the subjects sometimes are sober. We're in a very sober time on Earth. So to change, to truth, let's go to the next question or comment. Ian?
Kirsten E. is in the chat from, I hope I pronounced this right, Whangarei, New Zealand. She says, on the 19th of October, I was woken up by a large boom. Felt like it went through me. It was 2 a.m. I got up and went round the house, found nothing. No one else heard anything.
The scientists from Princeton, other scientists from other universities, do any of you have true insights about why, beginning in 2011, January, those were my very first reports, never before, January 2011. And we're coming up to the end of October of 2021, so it's almost a full decade. These reports have come from around the entire planet for a decade. And it's always the same thing. When people feel like their roof is coming in, this is not minor. When people feel the windows and the floors of their house shake, it's not minor. Retired Navy Captain Mark Wood called me the day and said, Linda, one of these booms has now happened in my house in Boca Raton. And he said he was upstairs on a second floor. And he said, I can tell you for sure, it was like a compression wave coming from above at an angle, and it only hit one side of my house. That had been reported before. And that might explain or might not, because it seems so complex and strange. I have interviewed so many families in which there might be 5 or 6 houses on one side of the street and 5 or 6 on the other in a block. And only one family in one house, the tremendous sound, children, husband, wife, all hearing, running out into their front yard, expecting to see all of the neighbors coming out. They go around because they call me or they get in touch with me by email and I call them back. I hear what it was that they each heard. I ask them if they could go and make a canvas of all of their neighbors. They come back and call me and say, nobody else heard anything. What is this focus of something that comes across to the human mind and ear as an explosive boom? But it isn't just the sound. It is rattling glass, it is rattling floors, it has cracked cement, it has cracked foundations, it has slapped the bottom of one person's shoes, while others will say, no, no, it came from above. The opposite. For those of you who might be in science and not in the Pentagon with all the NDAs and non-disclosures there, if there are those of you in science who might have some confidential information about what these sounds for an entire decade could be related to, I would be grateful for communication. I don't have to use your real name, but I would like to establish I always try to establish what is the background of people who are communicating to me information so that I have some valid ground on which to stand as a reporter, and then saying I have heard from a geophysicist who says that there is information that ABC could be the source of these sounds. And then my next question would be, if there are scientists, if there are people working in all the underground labs underneath the United States who know what the booms are about, what the metallic sounds are about, what the so-called trumpet sounds are about that have been happening for 10 years, just like ETs, why can't the whole world population be told the truth of what is behind all of these bizarre, periodic sounds that are at least focused enough to really, truly interrupt individual houses and homes, and that we all deserve better understanding? And if it's new physics, if it is something that we are moving into as a solar system inside of the Milky Way galaxy, we just can't possibly keep going into the future with every new fact that is really a fact being put in a classified file. Oh no, we can't tell humans. It's never going to work. If we all would start telling everybody the whole truth, good, bad, and ugly, we might end up on a planet in which we could survive together. I appeal to everyone who has real knowledge. I'm not out to reveal you. What I'm trying to do is to feel like I get valid information, enough valid information that I can share this weekly and also in some other work that I am doing that I hope to take public. There's a whole new definition of our universe upon us and around us. Avi Loeb at Harvard, he wrote an article for, this is Scientific American, this is just a copy, but listen to this title, this is recent. Was our universe created in a laboratory? Avi Loeb, chairman of the Harvard Astronomy Department for a decade, writing in Scientific American, was our universe created in a laboratory? Doesn't that sound almost like the Jerry Wills interview that I had here a couple of months ago? And Jerry was, for a long time, he was very reluctant. And it was like, well, if I talk about what I really saw, what I really heard, this voice, talking about how they made our universe, and our universe started expanding, and they had to put a technology around this universe to slow it down, he said people would think I was crazy. Not anymore. The breakthroughs in physics, mathematics, what is happening in the redefinition of everything that we know about the structure of this universe seems to be coming back in line to what people have been told in abductions and even vivid dreams. So I hope that for those of you who have real science and mathematical knowledge, that you will get in touch with me so that I can at least help share with an audience what might be the explanations. And that something in me says it's really, really important that honest insights be given to people now? Because it could be that something really, really big is coming. Not necessarily negative, but huge. And if we all had some kind of similar playing ground, the landscape on which we live and work, if we had that around the planet in all languages, then whatever does happen, then maybe we would all have been made to grow up more and not be in such a state of fighting people because no one really understands what the truth is much anymore. If we could just get past that, if there could be a worldwide headline, we are not alone in this universe, it's just preposterous. We've got to change it. And for those of you who can help me, I would be really, really grateful. It doesn't mean having to explain who you are. It means that the information that you would provide some evidence that it's real. Okay, Ian, what do we have next?
We've got Michael K in the chat tonight. He's also from Princeton. He says he'd like to alert you about some terrible sounding, screeching, grinding, and very intense blasts of horns screaming for minutes.
Well, when anything is that dramatic, my standard answer over the 10 years has been a word description is maybe a half or a third of the story. That what we really need are for people to try to find security cameras that recorded sounds in their neighborhood or in an office building. If we could get a number of hard pieces of evidence of real recordings, real visual, who knows? There's been several in the East Coast where the security camera got the sound really clear, but in anticipation, there is a blast of light for a fraction of a second right before the boom. There was one that was very clear like that in Salem, Massachusetts. And it was on the web for a long time, and I could give out the URL and you could go and hear a very perfect example of a boom that was anticipated by this bright, bright flash of light, all caught on a security camera. And for whatever reasons, that video disappeared about 2 years ago. And unless you had it embedded in your website, which in this case, I do have it at earthfiles.com. If you go to my news website, where I have literally about 3,000 reports and 70,000 images and documents and maps, and you type in the search bar, type in capital S-A-L-E-M, Salem. It was Salem, Massachusetts. Just type in Salem and see what comes up. And that video is in my Earthfiles report, and you can hear and see that. But out of 10 years, the number of clear security cameras that have documented sounds or even lights or orbs moving on a porch or something, they're few and far between. So I would say to you at Princeton, if you are describing having heard Halloween screeching sounds, what you need to do, I guess, is make sure, if you think it's something that's going to reoccur, have some kind of a security camera that's going to run and pick it up. If you're talking about a one-time event, and that are you the only person who is describing it, just like science and scientific method, it becomes very hard to report singular events until there is a pattern that comes from others and or recordings. So that's the screen through which I try to filter the boom, the metallic screeching, well, it's more like trains crashing, that sound, and then the strange trumpet-like note sound that some people have recorded. And I guess if you guys at Princeton are trying to follow and understand phenomena more, come up with ways that you could have documentation around the clock for a whole week in an area where you've heard sounds or seen craft or anything. That's what we are needing. The government has it in spades. The government has evidence in spades, but it isn't shared with us. So that's the problem. Okay, what else have we got?
Linda, last week we had a fantastic comment from someone who said perhaps the ETs have been keeping us safe for decades by disarming nuclear missiles. A question here tonight is from Greg. It says, Linda, in your opinion, is there an EE species which might be inclined to use our nuclear missiles to hurt us?
Those are very good questions, each on the side of a coin. I understand what you're asking. I am going to share, sort of a big idea that actually is, I'm meaning a big idea that is far further from the details, because I'm not prepared to go into all the details. But I think that I feel I can say this. I think that there are at least two species that have large civilizations in the Milky Way galaxy that have a vested interest in the survival of Earth. Earth is, I think, an extraordinary planet. I think there are other Earths, but I don't think that they are multiplied over and over and over again through the cosmos, through the whole universe. I think we're on a very precious and rare Earth. And as the DIA analyst told me in December of 1999, the Earth has been used by a laboratory by 3 civilizations from the Milky Way galaxy and beyond who have competed with each other over this planet because each one wants the Earth for themselves. And I think it is, I cannot prove it with hard evidence, but I think it is true in my mind that there are 2 species who have a vested interest in our planet, and that they are trying sincerely to help us. And I think that there are others, as Lynn Buchanan and remote viewers have said, we're in a universe of friendlies, neutrals, and hostiles, sort of like Earth, sort of like probably everything that goes on through this universe. And I personally, it's a personal opinion. This is my personal opinion. I think that the UFO intrusions in our Minuteman missile bases going all the way back to the 1960s up to at least 2018, I think it was because those beings know that if nuclear war took place on this planet, it would tear into dimensions that we know nothing about, and that we are in a universe in which we are relating with the matter 3D world. But if we understood the reality, we would see frequencies upon frequencies upon frequencies. And those frequencies are dimensions. And those dimensions do not have hard walls between them. Frequency changes. I've used the metaphor of the piano before, the 88 keys on the piano, black and white. Each note is a different frequency. So if you think of a piano and putting your hands and listening to each note, and then you can take and do a chord, and then you can do a larger chord that is a mixture of frequencies that you generate by being able to put your fingers on keys that go down to architecture that will plunk a wire. So if you started thinking that if David Bohm in Wholeness in the Implicate Order was correct, then all mass is frozen light. And that in the next year or two, we might finally have a big headline. It has now been solved, and we now know we're in a holographic universe. The more we prepare ourselves for headlines like that, perhaps the less we will be shocked, and therefore the stronger we will be. If we are in a holographic universe, and there are multiple dimensions, and the dimensions do not have walls, and that resonance is the key, resonance in frequencies would be how you would move. Not like a bunch of billion steps to go around. Resonant frequency. So in that context, coming back to the question, could some of the extraterrestrials be trying to help us by bringing down and demonstrating that they can 100% control our nuclear missiles? They have never done anything that was violent that I know of against the humans or the underground launch facilities or anything. It's just they have demonstrated they can control those missiles. They can take them down one every single second, 10 seconds. They can disconnect the communication between 50 missiles. It almost makes me feel better to know that. I wonder how many of you feel that same thing. It's like learning that no matter how babyish humans are, how much we have been kept from truths, that there are beings that can interfere with our inability to control ourselves. And that in the end, that ends up protecting us. And the other side of the coin, are there intelligences in this universe who can use human minds, abuse human consciousness, and deliberately force us to do something as insane, absolutely insane as nuclear war? Probably. There's no win. There is no win in nuclear war. It can be argued that the atomic bomb was a demonstration by the United States in Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August of 1945, and that the horror of those blasts and what happened instantly, 80,000 human beings, 80,000, 80,000 humans died instantly in Hiroshima. What happened to those 80,000 souls? Are souls completely destroyed in something like an atomic blast? And if that occurs, does it affect the recycling of souls in this cosmos that we humans do not understand very well, but has been so long a part of our history, modern and ancient, that I personally am convinced that the soul is always the surviving part of a matter life, and that the soul is absolutely crucial to something in the bigger divine. And we on this planet, we made something, not the first. I'm assuming there was an atomic blast on Mars by equally dumb consciousnesses, maybe Anunnaki, that John Brandenburg is convinced that there was hydrogen, 2 hydrogen bombs above Cydonia. So we are not the first people stupid enough to do this, and it was done someplace else. But I think it can be argued that even if there are other beings that would be as insidious as that question implies, who would use mind over matter to make humans create a nuclear war, I honestly, I guess feel that these 2 species that have vested interests in this earth, and that must be a billion times wiser than we are since we've been kept babies, that they would continue to interrupt and shut down nuclear missiles as a demonstration of what they could do over and over and over again, as a way of saying, we will never let you have atomic bombs again in a war. That seems to be the message. And again, I honestly feel better if that is the truth. You guys, write me. Tell me if we had absolutely hard, proven evidence presented to every single one of us that non-humans out in this Milky Way galaxy or beyond have been the ones doing the interference in all of our Minuteman missiles, doing it since the 60s to now. They've never destroyed anything else that I know about. They've just made sure that we all understood they can control everything about our missiles. Does it make you feel better that that has happened? Or not? I'm at the 8:30 mark. I've enjoyed sharing tonight, feeling like, in a way, we are becoming deeper with our questions, and that I would like to keep sharing more and more deeply. I've been learning a lot, and I would like somehow to share some things. So keep coming, keep subscribing, we'll keep growing, and I love you. See you next week.
Turn on closed captions for YouTube videos by clicking the white CC button on the lower right. The default language for Linda's videos is English. If you would like to see the captions in another language, click on the white settings button next to the CC button. Select Subtitles CC, and then select Auto Translate. Select a language, and the captions will now appear in that language.
Sort of gone through, and they will hold their heads. I never had a cat do that before. And they'll pull against the comb, helping me get out snarls. And I think it's the best they've ever been.